There's something strange about guilt. It doesn't always arrive in words or confessions. Most of the time, it slips out quietly, through actions that don't seem to add up. You know the kind of thing I'm talking about, those little changes in behavior that leave you wondering, what's going on here? Picture this. Mark had been married to Emily for 8 years. He knew her habits like the back of his hand. The way she sipped her coffee with too much sugar, the way she'd curl up on the couch with a blanket even in summer, the way she'd always hum that same tune when she was happy. But one evening, something shifted. Emily suddenly wrapped her arms around him the moment he walked in the door. She kissed him like she hadn't in months. She whispered, "I love you" 3 times before dinner. On the surface, it seemed sweet, even romantic. But Mark couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't love blooming, it was something else. That's the thing about guilt. When a woman cheats, she might never admit it. She may never let the words "I betrayed you" leave her lips. But inside, she knows she crossed a line. And that guilt changes everything, the way she looks at you, the way she touches you, the way she tries to distract you from asking the wrong questions. If you've ever felt that sudden shift in the air, like something invisible has crept between you, you're not imagining it. Guilt leaves fingerprints, and once you know what to watch for, the signs are as clear as day. Emily's behavior didn't just stop at affection. Out of nowhere, she started buying Mark gifts. A new jacket he hadn't asked for. A fancy gadget she knew he liked. Small surprises that seemed thoughtful on the surface. But Mark found himself asking, why now? Why this sudden generosity? People often call it guilt spending. It's not just about being kind, it's about trying to pay off a debt that can't be repaid. She couldn't take back what she had done, but she could try to quiet the storm inside her by showering him with things. Then came the questions. Emily, who had once been casually interested in his day, suddenly wanted to know every detail. How was work? Who did you talk to? What did you eat for lunch? What time did you get home? At first, it felt nice, like she was more engaged. But Mark noticed the difference. It wasn't just curiosity, it was strategy. The more she pulled the spotlight onto him, the less he thought about her day. The more she dug into his life, the easier it was to hide her own. And when Mark finally did ask a simple question, "Where were you earlier?" the room changed. Emily snapped, defensive as though she'd been accused of a crime. That's what guilt does. It twists harmless questions into attacks, because the guilty mind is always on guard. Her voice trembled, her face flushed, and her answer was longer than the question itself. He wasn't accusing her, he was simply asking. But her guilt made her hear it differently. Mark noticed other things too. Emily's routines started shifting. She cooked dinner more often than usual, watched his favorite shows even though she never cared for them before. It was like she was trying to sew up holes in their relationship with gestures. But it didn't feel natural, it felt forced, like an actress playing a role she didn't believe in. And then, something even more curious happened. Emily, who had always been protective of where Mark was going, suddenly loosened her grip. "Go out with your friends," she said. "I trust you." On the surface, it sounded generous. But Mark knew her too well. For years, she had always been just a little jealous, just a little controlling. Why was she suddenly so relaxed? That's when he realized she wasn't granting freedom out of love. She was balancing the scales. If she had cheated, then maybe giving him freedom made them even in her mind. But the phone, that's where Mark saw the most telling change. At first, Emily clutched it like a lifeline, never letting it out of her sight. But weeks later, she flipped her strategy. She started leaving it lying around unlocked, almost daring him to look. Mark understood why. By then, the evidence was gone, erased carefully. What he saw was not transparency, it was a performance, meant to rebuild trust while keeping the truth buried. The guilt didn't stop there. Emily's words shifted too. She praised him constantly, "You're the best husband, no one understands me like you." Compliments that might have warmed his heart once now rang hollow. They weren't born from admiration, they were born from the weight of betrayal. When someone knows deep down they don't deserve you, they'll sometimes overpraise you to drown out the voice inside telling them the truth. Mark also began to notice sudden bursts of sadness in her. He would catch her staring off into space, eyes glassy, or crying quietly in the bathroom. When he asked what was wrong, she blamed work, stress, anything but what her mind was truly replaying, the night she crossed the line, the secret she carried like a stone in her chest. And finally, the strangest sign of all, Emily started bringing up cheating indirectly. She'd make offhand comments about how awful it was that a friend's husband had cheated. She'd ask questions about what Mark thought of people who betray their partners. On the surface, it was casual conversation. But Mark recognized it for what it was, a disguised confession, a safe way to let her guilt bleed out without ever saying the words directly. Here's the truth most people don't realize: when a woman cheats and feels guilty, she doesn't always pull away. Sometimes, she pulls closer, but for the wrong reasons. The affection, the gifts, the questions, the praise, they're not always love. Sometimes they're a desperate attempt to cover a wound before you even notice it's there. Guilt has a way of changing behavior, whether she admits the truth or not. And if you start seeing all these shifts happen at once, don't ignore them. It's not random kindness. It's not a sudden burst of romance. It's the shadow of something she's too afraid to admit. That's why awareness is so important. The Stoic man doesn't jump to conclusions, but he doesn't close his eyes either. He observes, he notices patterns, and he trusts what the behavior reveals more than the words spoken. Because at the end of the day, guilt can't be hidden forever. It always leaks out, one way or another. So the question is, if you noticed these signs in your own relationship, would you be ready to see the truth? Or would you let the performance convince you everything was fine?